get a lot of emails, or I should say I should get a lot of emails about how I got started in this business, how I got into cars, and how basically all of this started. And believe it or not, one of the reasons is this car right here and the owner. 12 years ago, I actually did a reality show. The gentleman who was my competitor is the owner of this car. Back then, I was a web designer at an investment bank. Back then, he was an aspiring actor. Well, now he's a stuntman and I do this. And I have to say it's kind of bittersweet because we both started this career together. We both ended up exactly where we wanted to be. Welcome to a very special episode of the House of Muscle.
I got into cars at an early age, started with Matchbox cars in kindergarten. My dad's always been an avid car guy, and I guess his influence brought me to the car hobby. Cars has been a big influence in my life. Just spent all my money on cars, basically, have a bunch of them. I've always worked on them myself. I'll never forget my older brother's friend had a 4-door Grand Am. I believe it was a Grand Am, but it had a 400 big block in it, and he would just do burnouts on 63rd Drive in Rego Park. That was the first time I got a taste of American muscle. And he just burned rubber for a good hour, back and forth, and I said, one day, I'm gonna have a car just like that. I'm gonna have a car that can burn rubber just like that, because that's everything.
Over 10 years ago, I actually did a reality show. Now, in that show, I drove my 68 Charger, and, well, in that show, he drove this 1975 Hurst Oldsmobile. Back then, we were pretty good competitors. In fact, I made it to the 11th episode, he made it to the 12th, and he won. Not the show, just the 12th episode where he beat me and I was very upset. But whatever. Fact of the matter is, in those over 10 years since I've filmed that show, my friend Andre De Silva and I have become pretty close. And it all started because of our love for muscle cars. Now, I remember the first time I saw it was in Kalispell, Montana. That's where we did this thing, and this Oldsmobile pulled up, and I looked at it and I said, what the hell's that thing? And granted, I knew it was an Olds, but I wasn't really familiar with the 75 Hurst Olds. This is the start of the Colonnade era, meaning it was a 4th gen Cutlass Supreme, and these cars were built from 1973 to 1977. And by Colonnade, I mean, look at the body lines. Big long hood, massive doors, long rear deck. It was kind of the era where muscle was dead and smog regulations took over. This car, being an actual Hurst Olds, is quite rare. Less than 1,600 of these were actually put on the street in this color, and being a W30 car means it's even rarer because it came stock with a 455. Now, the 455 back then, it didn't put out a lot of grunt. I think power was around 210 horsepower or so, but the torque numbers were always up there. This one, now, with this 455, like, it makes about 600 horsepower and a hell of a lot more than 300 pound-feet of torque. So when Oldsmobile redesigned the Cutlass back in '73, they really did want to appeal to kind of like the more adult buyer, and they made the car much more comfortable. We've got these Strato high back seats, which actually rotate like this to let you in and out of the car easy. So I can literally rotate the entire seat, jump out of the car with no problem. Now, is that cool? Yeah, it kinda is. Is that cheesy? Yeah, it kinda is. Is it uncomfortable? A little bit. And here's the reason. While I can move the seat forward and backwards, I have no adjustability other than that. I can't move it up, I can't move it down, I can't recline it or anything. So I'm kind of stuck in this position. Now, if this position doesn't fit you, you're kind of screwed. If you look at the dash layout, cars were now starting to get a little less driver-centric and a little more passenger-friendly. So while everything is still kind of concave to me and still accessible, it's not nearly as bad as it used to be when manufacturers designed the car just for the driver and didn't give a crap about the passenger. I mean, passengers actually do have vents that they can control. Two on that side, one underneath, which is the ball vent. That's always fun. And it's just a more modern feel.
My first car was a '75 Oldsmobile, kind of like what you see here, but without the Hurst Olds package. My mom gave me that car. was my first car. And it was the best car in the world to me because it was my first car. And it had a V8 and it had 2 doors. To me, that was enough. Why did I end up choosing, say, this car and all these cars? There was a little tragic story to it. My mom passed away 2 days after she gave me the car. And it was the last thing she gave me before dying. So I said, okay, this is what I'm gonna work with. She was on her way to work and the car broke down and she had to take the bus. So she never made it to the bus. She got hit by a car. Long story short, she passed away. So now I'm left with this car. It was the last thing my mom gave me. So now it just, it's huge. I learned to work on cars because of that, so that nobody in my family would ever need to take a bus again. And I learned every single nut and bolt on this car. I mean, if you pull a random bolt off of this car, I could tell you where it goes. I still have my mom's car. It's in a garage. It's fully painted. The motor is ready. The transmission is ready. It's a project that hasn't been completed yet, but will soon, which leads me to this car. This is the high-performance version of my first car, which was my '75 Cutlass Supreme. When I saw this in the paper, it said 455, Hurst Olds. That's all I needed to know. I went down and I bought it sight unseen.
So I need you to look at this Hurst edition a little differently. One, in 1975, everything was fatter, slower. It was kind of like the old Elvis of automobiles. 5 to 10 years before, the muscle car era was in full gear. Things were making 400 or 500 horsepower. But now, we had a 455 that made like 210 horsepower. Granted, it was still a stump puller because it made a lot of torque. But the fact of the matter was, we were now dealing with the fat Elvis, not the cool, young, hip Elvis that swung the microphone all in the hips all over the place. But in 1975, when this car was made, Hurst decided to have a little fun with it. The body lines. This is a big coupe. We've got these big, like cow killer bumpers front and rear. The body lines were a little more slab-sided, not as smooth. And overall, the car had a feeling of more of a big luxury coupe than it did an actual big, bad, burly muscle car. Now, the Hurst edition did have some trick features. One, we've got these tops up here. Don't call them T-tops because back then they were actually labeled the Hurst hatch. And while it does say that these were the first actual T-tops on a GM car, that's not true because the '68 Corvette had T-tops long before this thing did. But one thing that GM didn't count on with these T-tops is that they leak. Every T-top from GM from the mid-'70s all the way through the late '90s leaked. It's just a fact. So let's go over some specs of Andre's car, and before you say, I can't believe he modified such a rare car, which he did, understand that back in the day, he bought this thing for $1,200 when it comes to the engine. Well, it still retains a 455 under the hood. He's got heads, a cam, it's done 30 over, he's got Holley Sniper EFI on it, and this thing makes about 580 horsepower and about 600 pound-feet of torque. The tranny in this thing is a 200 R4 that's been beefed up to withstand all the power and the torque. Andre's car, when he first got it, I think he said it had like 373s, but now he's got 323 gears with an overdrive. It's got air conditioning. It has modern suspension. It's got Global West tubular uppers and lower control arms. He's got Hotchkiss and key shocks all around. And the car, even on these New York City roads, actually gives you a pretty good ride. We're not bottoming out. We're not getting our heads banged around. Our seats are comfortable. It's actually pretty good.
These cars, the Hurst Olds package by the mid-'70s was more of a appearance package, although there were some heavy-duty items like sway bars, springs. Well, the big motor is definitely an indication of some performance left. This car was equipped from the factory with a 455. A 350 was the other option for Hurst. They had other engine options. There was a 260 V8, which was horrific, 110 horsepower, which was not available in Hurst. The standard motor was a 350, and the 455 was an option. They came in white and gold and black and gold. They made about an equal amount of each. Other options were the 15x7 rally wheels that came, I believe 14-inch was standard. It came with the dual exhaust also, and rear sway bar. So this car did handle pretty well compared to other cars of that year. Okay, this car has gone through many modifications. I would say about 3 rebuilds in total. Various stages of engine performance. When I first got the car, it had a factory 1970 455 rebuild, but I wanted a little more streetability, so I had the motor redone. It was putting out about 450 horsepower, but I lowered the gear ratio to I think 323 at the time. So I was a little disappointed. I should have just gone with 342 or something, because it didn't do burnouts as well, even though the power was higher. And then car started getting faster, and I just needed more power. So I rebuilt the motor again to what it is now. And I believe the motor dynoed at about 580, 585. And it has a 250 shot nitrous in it, just in case somebody gives me trouble.
So one of the other things, and one of the greatest modifications I think you can do in an old car, is fuel injection. Now, Andre did the Sniper EFI kit from Holley in this thing, and it's normal, right? It starts up at the turn of the key. You don't have to worry about the car, if you ever drive over mountains or go through altitude, that you gotta change the needles and seats and the jets and all that other stuff. It idles correctly, you don't smell of fuel, and the other portion of it is you get better fuel economy. I was so against this because I always felt like old cars needed a carburetor, but then you start driving stuff with new technology and you're like, wow, that's a really good idea. Why didn't I do it earlier? Kind of an idiot. Now, performance from this thing, the 455 is really good. Now, Andre, I know he wants more power. I mean, he's got a 250 shot of nitrous in the trunk, and this on motor makes 580 horsepower. So like, with the big boy 250 shot, you're talking some like big sets of like go-go juice on this thing. Like, I drop it down, the thing doesn't take off. It's got the grunt. Every time I step on the gas, the car's just like, ruh, ruh, and that just makes you feel kind of macho. This thing goes, and it shifts pretty hard. So here's the thing about Andre, and he's pretty humble about this. He is a professional stuntman and an actor. So when you see somebody jumping out of a window in a television show, well, it's probably him. When you see somebody sliding a car around a corner at full lock, going like this, well, odds are it's probably him. He's done a lot of video game work and acting and stuff, so next time you watch TV, next time you play your favorite video game, reference this video and keep an eye out and keep an ear open for his voice, because I guarantee he pops up.
As a stuntman, actually they call it these days an action actor, because I am an actor as well. I found a small niche in the business where I do stunts, but I can also deliver lines, which has afforded me to get into this business, delivering lines before I get shot, killed, or blown up, or jump off a building. Some of the projects that I've worked on as a stuntman are Grand Theft Auto 5, Max Payne 3. Currently working on a project right now that'll be released in the fall. Gotham, Luke Cage, which I actually got nominated for a Screen Actors Guild Award for. Didn't win though, but it's kind of cool to be nominated for something. Something I could show my dad, you know, a little piece of paper. Aside from those shows, I worked on dozens of other TV shows and film as well.
Andre and I kind of started in this business together. I mean, I started in the automotive world, 10, 12 years ago, and Andre started in acting around the same time. And we've both kind of ended up in our subsequent careers kind of exactly where we wanted to be at exactly the same point in our lives. And that's kind of cool because, you know, neither one of us back in the day thought either one of us would be doing what we're doing now. And when you reconnect with people, you find out that, holy crap, like, you did find your dream job, and like, you are making a living at it, and it's really cool, and people like what you do. So to all you guys out there that are kind of on the fence about taking a chance and jumping from career to career, take the chance. Like, I was in my mid-30s when I started this, and I know I'm dating myself, but the fact is, I'm in my mid-40s now. 10 years of my life away for free, but you know what? I'm driving a 600 horsepower, like, Hurst Oldsmobile around my old hometown of Queens. and I'm making money, and I'm doing what I want to do. So don't let anyone ever tell you that, oh, you're never going to make it in your career, because God knows people told me that. And all I got to say to you is,
Can we actually do that again? Because I just realized I was like this the whole time. Oi! Arr!